So I've always known the movie Signs starring Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix to be a really polarizing and controversial film among film fans, but I recently rewatched it and it's actually one of the best Christian or faith-based films I've ever seen. Even though this movie was written and directed by somebody who isn't a Christian. So Signs is an alien invasion film about a widowed preacher living with his children and brother on a Pennsylvania farm who finds mysterious crop cycles in their fields, which suggest something more frightening to come. So about the film itself, I think this is just a brilliantly made, interesting alien sci-fi mystery horror film that is not only scary but also really emotional. I teared up multiple times during seeing this film because of how the themes around family and faith were treated in the story. This film deals in a very personal, nuanced and delicate way with the real doubts and struggles that come with being a person of faith. Most Christian films I've seen really shy away from doing such an effective and good genre film, and also nevertheless shy away from asking like difficult questions about the mystery of faith, fate, destiny, the nature of God, free will, and things like that. The interesting thing is the director M. Night Shyamalan is an atheist, like he's not Christian, and M. Night Shyamalan is one of the most polarizing directors in film culture. You either love his films or you hate his films because he makes like these big, ambitious, commercial movies, genre films that have like a unique way they're telling the story and a unique direction with really a big emotional focus, and always preach a clear statement that also has some philosophical and spiritual elements woven into that. And you can really compare M. Night Shyamalan to somebody like Christopher Nolan, who is polarizing in really similar ways. I, for once, have always loved the films of M. Night Shyamalan. I think he's such a creative and interesting director, although after coming to faith, I've grown to be way more critical of his use of biblical elements and Christian influence, because oftentimes like he uses Christian ideas, visuals, and story elements and kind of combines them with a progressive political ideology, or uses them for weird artistic detours into psychological horror. And as a Christian, I wouldn't support every single one of his films, and neither would I watch or rewatch all of his films. But M. Night Shyamalan has had, throughout all of his work and his career, had a fascination with Christianity. And even like he's from Philadelphia and he was actually raised Hindu by Malaysian parents. But exactly the same way like Christopher Nolan, he grew up going to a Catholic school for over 10 years. So many of his foundational ideas and education have been around Christianity, Christian values, and ideology. Knowing that, it comes to less of a surprise how big of an influence Christianity is on his filmmaking. Now, what makes Signs one of the best Christian films that I've seen? For once, this is such a creative and well-made and moving film. It's scary, sad, funny, emotional, and suspenseful, and really makes you think and feel a lot at the same time. Signs uses the story of a preacher who has kind of neglected his faith, left his faith after the death of his wife. He lives through the alien apocalypse and comes back to his faith. He uses all of that to ask the most fundamental and basic questions about God that we all have asked ourselves at one point or another. Are there any coincidences? Is there free will? How can God let bad things happen? And this film really discusses these questions from a very childlike point of view, something that M. Night Shyamalan put intentionally into this film. There is an interview where he told the story that during the writing of Signs, he had an experience at a Denny's restaurant where he was like observing a family that were eating like quietly at their table, and he was like, okay, if families like this come out to see my films, I want to give them a good feeling. I want to uplift them. And the childlike point of view from where these spiritual questions are being asked makes it all more honest and unbiased and emotional than if it would have been asked for a more colder view like the Christopher Nolan films for the most part. With the alien invasion slowly approaching in the film, the former reverend is asked by all different kinds of people to kind of fulfill his role as a preacher, even though he isn't a preacher anymore, and this kind of need for guidance and longing to fall back on the fundamentals and values that have been there long before us in difficult times is something that we can observe in culture happening today with Christianity, with so many things like having a vibe shift and putting Christianity more front and center in mainstream culture, with people like Joe Rogan, or Russell Brand or Jordan Peterson. There are two scenes, especially in this film, I want to talk about that really impressed me and moved me. The first one is a scene where Mel Gibson's character has a discussion with his brother, played by Joaquin Phoenix, late at night on a sofa in front of the TV, running silently in the background, and Mel Gibson's character's kids sleeping on their laps. And they kind of talk about how there are two kinds of people. The first kind believe that everything is a kind of coincidence and we are essentially all alone in the universe. And the second kind believes that nothing is a coincidence and everything that happens is under God's plan. And the reaction Joaquin Phoenix has in response to that is really unexpected, kind of primitive, but so human. And just watch the film, watch the scene, and you know what I'm talking about. I think, for me at least, it really reflects how a movie like Science is able to ask these big questions without letting go of being like grounded as a film. And the second scene is at the end of the film, where the apocalypse is literally at the door, knocking at the door, and the family sitting around the table having maybe their last meal ever, and the former preacher's son asks Mel Gibson to say a prayer, and the way Mel Gibson reacts to that is so moving, human, and just reflects how we as men, what we as men are doing, like by being the tough guys, oftentimes just is just hiding our own vulnerability in front of ours, and it just reflects the fear we as men have in being vulnerable in front of other people. I think it's just so well acted, that scene, like one scene among many in this film that are well acted. And Science just shows that faith is something that isn't accessible for people who have hardened their hearts and kind of given themselves to the ways of the world. And in order to access real faith and real trust in God, we have to have humility, be humble, and have like this childlike, innocent unbiasedness that children have. So I just love when movies have this childlike perspective and POV, even if there are movies for grown-ups, like Interstellar, for example, has a lot of course, visual similarities to Science. I just love when films have like this Spielbergian, childlike perspective, and Science has a lot of that. And in the end, the presence of God and God's plan is revealed through like a sci-fi mystery plot twist. A lot of people criticize that, but honestly, I don't care, because in the end, this is a sci-fi mystery film. And if somebody like C.S. Lewis or Tolkien wrote this, nobody would criticize how the film uses fantasy and supernatural elements in order to reflect Christian ideas, ideology, and just values. Not comparing C.S. Lewis and Tolkien to M. Night Shyamalan in any other kind of way, just to like make this comparison when it comes to that. And in the end, the question is, can an atheist make a great Christian film? I think he can, because like I discussed in my video about Christopher Nolan's films, you can be so close to the truth, but the whole truth you'll only get by surrendering yourself and trusting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and getting saved by grace through faith. Because all truths come from, through, and in Jesus Christ. But no film is a substitute for the Bible, so no film out there needs to have all the answers. Nowadays, I just think that any piece of art, any film serves one of two purposes. A movie will either bring you closer to God or take you further away from God. And when it comes to that, Science does a great job on showing the importance of having a steadfast faith in difficult times, It shows the presence of God and what happens to us if we aren't connected to God and have the guidance. We are really going nowhere in life, especially when everything hits the fan, you know. We are going nowhere if we don't believe in our God and let us guide and let go and let us be guided by God and really believe that and trust that, okay, there is meaning even in the darkest of darkest times. All right, guys, this is it for today. Thank you so much for watching my review right here. I wish you all a blessed day and hope to have you back in my next video.